Hello everyone, and welcome to this segment of our board candidate video series. This segment focusing on the realities of school board service. And here with me to discuss that topic is Melissa Randall, the Executive Director of the Missouri School Boards Association, and Larry Felton, the President of the Missouri School Boards Association. And Larry is a board member in the Melville School District in St. Louis County. And thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right, Melissa, let's start with you. If we could, tell us about why school boards are important in our system of public education.
Well, school boards are the entity that are elected by the local community members to represent them in determining the direction of their public education system in their community. They sit in trust on behalf of their community members to ensure that there is a quality public education system that's delivered to the children in their local communities.
So Melissa, if you could sum it up, what is the fundamental role of the Board of Education?
Well, the board has a number of roles that are critical. They govern the district, and they do that through setting policy. They set goals, the mission, and really the direction for the district. They hire a CEO, known as a superintendent in our state, and the superintendent is directed by the board to do the day-to-day operations on behalf of the board. And the superintendent follows the policy that the board adopts as he or she operates on a day-to-day basis. The board also has a fiduciary responsibility. They are responsible for adopting the budget and ensuring that the resources are allocated to carry out the responsibilities of the district.
And for our candidates, Melissa, should they be elected to their Board of Education in April, they will have a training requirement that they need to fulfill. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. In Missouri, we have a state law that requires all board members, once they're elected, to have 16 hours of training within the first 12 months after they're elected. Now, we strongly suggest that you get that training as soon as possible after you're elected, because this is a very complicated job. A school board member is operating one of the largest, if not the largest, entity within their community. So there are a lot of important decisions that a board member has to make immediately upon being sworn in as a board member. So we do encourage that training to occur as soon as possible, but the training provided through the Missouri School Boards Association, we cover everything from your legal responsibilities that you need to understand, how to comply with the law, what the law is that applies to you as a school board member. We also cover your policy-making responsibilities and everything on what you need to understand in developing and adopting a budget, and as well as relationships with your superintendent, how to hire, how to evaluate, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Larry Felton, you are an actual school board member. And how long have you been on your board?
I'm in my fourth term. I'm in my 10th year.
In your 10th year. If you can think back 10 years ago, Larry, when you started as a school board member, what was the most surprising or difficult thing that you had to learn right off the bat?
I think the first thing was you presume that the 7 people on the board all get along and they can solve just about any problem. You find out they really don't know much about collaboration. It's very difficult to get comfortable where you can exchange ideas and try and find common ground. I think the other thing, the biggest surprise, was how much power the people in the community think you have. I mean, well, can you do this for me and do this? And you have to explain to them that until I sit down at that table, I really have no more authority than you do as a citizen.
Mm-hmm. And so how long did it take you, Larry, before you felt comfortable as a participating member on your Board of Education?
Well, I'd like to say right away, but I preface that by saying my wife and I were very involved parents, whether it was choir parents or whether it was curriculum programs or studies. We were involved, so we had learned the school district kind of from the inside out. The other thing I did a little bit differently than everybody else, I went to board meetings for a year before I ran, because it wasn't the subject matter, it was the dynamics of how the board behaved, how the people got along, and what the relationship was with the superintendent and the other administrative people. So I felt like I could hit the ground running because I had the background to really know how it operated.
Is that something you would recommend to our candidates, that they start attending their local board meetings?
Absolutely. I think for 2 reasons. One, the content, because the thing a board considers is a much grander scale than you do at home. And look at finances. You know, most of us have a certain comfort level of finances. We write a check, we balance the books, you know. Well, you get into a school district, you add about 3 zeros to the numbers you're comfortable with. But you've also got the issue of finances are handled differently. Policy has a much greater importance. In a family, you might be affecting 5 or 6 people. School district, you're dealing anywhere from 700 to 1,000, at least in the size of the district I'm in. The other thing I would recommend to them is get started now. Be involved with your children. Go to the schools. Be involved in activities. Be a room mother. Be a PTO person. Get to understand the dynamics and the culture of your school. It's much easier to work on the board when you understand that than to just come in cold to thinking it's an entry-level position, and really it's a mid-management position in terms of what you've got to work on.
Mm-hmm. Melissa mentioned the training requirement, Larry, for newly elected board members. Would you recommend our candidates, should they be elected in April, get that training quickly?
I would get that as soon as possible. Just the idea that you get all of these complex ideas, everything from policy to law to finance to ethics, to get that all together and see how it fits. For many people, it's the first time they've probably discussed things or been exposed to that. I think it's a great jump start, and I think it helps you develop the terminology and the language that you're going to use as you serve as a board member.
Mm-hmm. A lot of our candidates, Larry, may think school board service amounts to going to a meeting once a month. Is there more to it than that?
Yeah, a little bit more. The meeting is actually the easy part, because you can sit down, discuss, decide, and be done with it. But when you get the board book, which can be anywhere from 100 to 300 pages long, you've got to go through that and make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, because that's why you were elected. But you've also got the issue to go back and say, well, I'm not sure that's what they said last year. So you've got to look back at trends. You've got to look at how your academics have run, how your finances have run. So it's one of those, as I explain to people when they ask me about running, is you can do as little as 3 hours a week, or you can put in 15 hours a week. Mm-hmm. It's what you want to get out of it and what you want to be able to bring to the table.
Melissa also mentioned, Larry, that one of the roles of the Board of Education is to serve as that link between the professional staff and the community. And so how do you do that?
Well, you do it with, I think, the most precious gift you have, and that's time. It's more valuable to me to be able to go to a concert or go to a grade school program and get a chance to talk to people and to get to know who you are and find out what's going on in that individual school. And then you can sit over and talk to the principal, the assistant principal, the people that work there, and get a feel from them. But the real key is the relationship you have with your superintendent, because the relationship you have there permeates with all the other administrators. But you want to be on a first name basis with them, just to be able to know, I recognize the work you're doing and the contribution you're doing, and here's what we're working on.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, Larry, that sometimes people think school board members have more power than they really do. And one of the examples of that might be an individual in the community, once you are elected, coming up to you with a particular issue, maybe relating to their own child or a teacher or something like that, come up to you in the grocery store and say, you're a board member, can you fix this for me? How do you respond to that?
Well, I do the chain of command response, which I think it takes you a while to figure out, but the first thing you ask them, have you discussed it with the teacher? Have you discussed it with the building's principal? Have you talked to the area superintendent? Have you talked to the superintendent? Have you talked to the people that are directly involved in your problem? Now, if you hit a roadblock, give me a call and I'll see if I can help you, but that's the progression. And I'll tell them, because when I get involved, the superintendent has handed it to us, and it's usually not a really nice decision that we have to make.
Yeah. Larry, of course, school board members come from all different walks of life. Most are not professional educators. Do you feel like as a board member you have to be an expert on school finance and curriculum and all these various aspects of running a school district?
I think you have to be smart enough to know what you don't know. And I say that because if you have a board that has multiple disciplines represented, you're going to find somebody on the board is going to be very strong with numbers. Somebody's going to be very strong with policy. Someone's going to be very strong with human resources. The other thing you'll figure out real fast is there are experts in your community that you can put into communities, into community committees, who can give you a good financial readout, who can give you a good facilities readout, they can give you a good readout on insurance issues. If you're smart enough to understand that there's experts there and you learn from what they tell you, then you can make better decisions. But to think that you're going to be the expert on finance with all those zeros and policy as complicated as it's driven by state and federal law, then you're missing the point. You're there to look at the broader picture and to get as much information as you can, and that's why you have experts that help you.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, Larry mentioned that relationship between the school board and the superintendent, and we talk about that a lot here at MSBA in our training and how important that is. Can you talk about that a little bit, why that relationship is so important, and then the overall board, school board relationship with the professional staff in the school district? How does that work?
Sure. Oh, Larry said it very well, that one of the most important jobs of a school board is to hire an effective superintendent who will carry out the board's policies that they've adopted. And the relationship, we train through our certified board member training, that the most important relationship that a board has is with their superintendent, who they have hired to be the liaison between the board and the staff. And Missouri state law does put a responsibility on the board to approve contracts of other staff, but we believe that the most important job of the board is to delegate those decisions for hiring and interacting with the staff to a CEO. The board does not have the time or the expertise to do that, and that's why they hire a competent CEO to take care of that responsibility. Having said that, there needs to be a very clear line of communication between the board and the superintendent, so there's an assurance that their policies are being enacted the way the board expects them to be enacted. There are regulations in place to further define those policies, and there's an ongoing evaluation of the superintendent so that the board is comfortable with the fact that their policies are in place and being fulfilled within the district. I would also like to mention that we also believe there's another unique relationship between the attorney and the board. And this gets kind of confusing in some districts. But when a board hires a general counsel, an attorney to represent the district, to represent the board, that attorney has a legal responsibility in terms of loyalty to the board. So the board should be very engaged in hiring that attorney, and there should be a clear understanding that that attorney represents the board's interests and on behalf of the district.
Larry, of course, one important aspect of school board service is in your local community, but you are a great example of a board member who's also been very active on the state level and the national level, where a lot of education policy is made. Would you encourage board members to be active on those levels as well? Very
much so. If you look at it just from a financial perspective, if you look at the impact that the federal government has on funding for our title programs, for the Perkins program, and for things for IDEA, for special education, it's important to understand what they can do legislatively to help that or hinder it. But I think I'd put more emphasis on the state level, because ultimately the local state representatives and state senators we elect pretty much dictate the policy that we are governed by. So the more you know about what the state's doing in terms of the education committees, in terms of the governor's position, in terms of our financial position, the better you can serve locally. You can bring those issues back and create relevance when you discuss budget or policy itself.
And Melissa, for our candidates who, many of them who will be elected in April, they are not going alone here in this area of school board service. MSBA exists as an organization to support local school boards and local school board members, and we can be a valuable resource, can't we?
You bet, Brent. We are an organization that was created by school board members, that is governed by school board members. You can see your fantastic president right here, who's providing us guidance every day. We are solely operating to make sure that school boards succeed in Missouri, and so we are available. We have a variety of different services to assist a board member and your school district in making sure that you are successful in helping your children succeed.
All right. Melissa Randall and Larry Felton, thanks a lot for being with us. And we thank you for being with us on this segment of our Board Candidate video series.